Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to MindShifters Radio with your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife, Jeanie. Michael and Jeanie share with you the wisdom of the ancient Aramaic internal process of forgiveness. They offer tools and support 5 days a week from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They will support you in building a solid foundation within yourself to live in pure love. In Aramaic, Rahma. Michael is the author of Why Is This Happening to Me Again? For more information on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. And now your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce.
And the truth that is rooted within me.
I choose to live more consciously. We thank that young lady for writing that awesome song, and we're delighted that you're with us today. My name is Dr. Michael Ryce, and this is Forgiveness Radio. MindShifters. What are MindShifters about? Well, MindShifters are a tool that we teach on how to change the content of your mind, along with all of the forgiveness work that we do. And we're absolutely awesomely blessed that you are here with us. And let's see if Jeanie is with us. Her phone hasn't been working very well from where we are in the Ozarks in southern Missouri. We're kind of out in the boonies, and phones are just not as reliable as they could be. Are you with us, Jeanie? Sounds like not. Okay. How about Dr. Tim? Are you here today? And David? Let's see who all is with us. If you're here and you can hear me, let me know. Well, okay, maybe I'm here by myself as far as the phone goes. And today, I believe, is day 61 of our celebration of Memorial Day. For those who are new to the show and new to the idea of celebrating Memorial Day. What are we doing celebrating Memorial Day 61 days outside of Memorial Day? Well, we've made a commitment, and our commitment is to do the work on planet Earth of eradicating war. Well, wait a minute. Well, that sounds like a big project. How are you going to do that? Well, let me share with you how we're going to do that. We're going to get enough people in this radio show who every day say, I'm willing to face one hostility or fear that I have in my mind that is unlike love today. And I'm going to remove that. I'm going to forgive that. Oh, well, what do you mean, Michael? You're going to let that thing off the hook for what it's done? Well, unfortunately, we've been taught a false idea of forgiveness. And what our work here is to restore the actual original Aramaic process of forgiveness. And if you're not familiar with what we're talking about, we will invite you to go to our website, www.whyagain.com, and on the right-hand side, you'll see a link that says Download Worksheets. I invite you to tap into the first 3 links on that part of the website. The first 3 links will explain the whole Aramaic idea of forgiveness. So forgiveness has nothing to do with letting somebody else off the hook for what's happening inside of you. Forgiveness is a tool with which you remove what never belonged from you. What never belonged in you. That is any form of hostility or fear. So forgiveness is the how to go in and delete what never belonged. It has nothing to do with blaming somebody else and then letting them off the hook for what's happening inside of you. So Once you understand forgiveness, you'll never forgive anybody ever again for anything. You'll never forgive yourself again for anything. Please stop forgiving others. Please stop forgiving yourself. However, what you can do is you can change what's going on inside of you. And as you change what's going on inside of you, you remove what did not belong. And guess what never belonged in this human form? No form of hostility or fear belongs in you. You were never designed for that. Now we come into a world where we inherit all of that, and it looks like it's just natural for that hostility and fear to be there. Well, we're here to offer you a new idea, and that is that the human race was never designed for hostility and fear. Hostility and fear eradicates human life from the human form. And we very simply offer that human life can easily be defined if you just tap into a newborn child. Go hold a newborn child. And as you hold that newborn, you will have a direct experience of the human life. And we're here to share and to restore the active presence of human life on the earth. And so here we are to support you in being able to live in that space of human life. And so as I look in the, I'm just jumping on the website, not an easy thing to do while I'm on the show, but it looks like we've got Tim and Joe here. Are you guys on the air or just in the chat room?
Well, I am on the air and the chat room.
There's Dr. Tim.
I'm on the air and the chat room.
Awesome.
How are you today?
I am blessed and highly favored. I actually just had an awesome experience. I was resting before the show, and we are in I think we're going into day 5 of teachers training. So we've been working with the same group of people, except for one person. One person left at the end of the 9-day Why Is This Happening to Me Again? The way this particular intensive is structured, teachers training is a 17-day workshop. And the first 9 days is a Why Is This Happening to Me Again intensive, and those who want to go on through teachers training do the next 9 days. And so overall it ends up being a 17-day intensive. And so we have the same group, and yesterday I got once again to present the Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop, and we have this incredibly advanced group of beings here, small but mighty group who are genius minds, each one of them in their own way and in their own right, and powerful beings really bent on doing their work. So we've just, over the last 14 or 15 days, gotten just some fabulous work done together. And then yesterday I'm presenting the Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop again. Before we move into what happens next in the teacher training is that the group, as a group, produced a Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop. And so yesterday there were several openings. I mean, everybody's really with the material and really moving into what do I need to understand to be able to present my part in the workshop. And so as that happened, it created some fabulous openings. And so I was just in a quiet space of resting before the class and, asking for support. What do I need to move through? What do I need to look at? And about the last maybe 2 or 3 minutes of the quiet space, I had this, you see a really nice postcard, or not postcard, but greeting card. And it's usually a Christmas theme, but it's kind of like, this Christmas theme with all the decorations and color, and then there's a central theme in the middle of the card. So I was asking Rooker, what things do I need to look at? And as I was in that space, I had this series of images that flashed before me that were just kind of like those cards. And in the center of each one was a different face, a different person. That they were not people who were recognizable to me, but it was just like, okay, here's some things that are going to be unwound. Here's some things going to be cleared up. So it was a pretty cool experience, and we're having an awesomely exciting intensive. So we're delighted that everybody's here. I see Joe's here, and welcome to Mountain Diva, Sherry, Peacemaker. Anything exciting in your world, Dr. Kim?
Well, just the usual. People using the tools, and have somebody coming in who's decided to do 5 worksheets a day each day and 10 for each of the days on the weekends when he's not working. And he's been doing that for about a month and a half now and is reporting fabulous progress. So I look forward to seeing him later in the day and hearing about his progress. And other than that, life is going along, as you often say, highly favored and blessed.
Yes. We just actually, David and I talked to Ari, and, he's now moved into his new apartment. They're unpacking in the throes of all of that. But, you might want to connect with Ari and get him up there for a support group or two. He is now doing 5 worksheets a day, and it's just fun to hear his process and what's going on for him. So it might be cool to key in. And I see Jeanie has some information for me. Okay. Yeah, actually, I jumped on there, and I'm kind of watching. So, yes. No, I do. Absolutely, I do, yes. So, Joe, I see your question here. Speaking to Ruka, who is that? Well, in the ancient Aramaic language, if you look at the worksheet process, Joe, you'll see at the bottom there's a definition of Ruka the Kudsha. And in the ancient Aramaic, what was taught was that there was an actual elemental force in us that would undo the effects of our errors and teach us the truth. It was, by definition, a feminine force. In our updated computer language today, we might call it the superprocessor. So there's a power in us that goes way beyond our own limited human capacity. And if you invite that power to go to work in you, it becomes your support. And so when you ask in the step in the worksheet in number 9A, you do the work of shebag, of canceling the goal that you have in that situation, and then you invite that power to go to work. If you look at the bottom of the worksheet, there's a definition there, and it is, it's the elemental force. When 2,000 years ago, when they talked to Yeshua about this, he talks to one of the elders of the temple, and he speaks of Ruka de Kudsha. It's been translated through Greek translations as the Holy Spirit. There's no way to translate it as some kind of disembodied spiritual being or disembodied something. It's this feminine elemental force. And when he shares this with one of the elders of the temple, the elder goes like, well, what are you talking about? And he says, what, you, one of the elders, you don't know this most basic piece of spiritual information? And then he uses an example of another elemental force that everybody's familiar with. He uses the example of the wind. And he says, we know this elemental force, the wind. Now, we don't know it directly. You don't know where it came from. You don't know what makes it up. And you don't know where it went when it left you, but you know by its effects that it's been here. And so it is with all the elemental forces. What makes up fire? What makes up air? What makes up earth? What makes up water? And they're each elemental forces, and I don't care how much figuring out science tries to do, they still can't tell us exactly what it is. And so it is with the elemental forces. And when you start to invite that force into your process, it will reach, in our limited capacity. Some of the information in the Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop that we put out there comes from some Harvard research where they said that in a time frame where 10,000 brain cells fire, the max amount of information that goes into conscious perception, into conscious awareness, is 9 bits of data. So we might say, in effect, that our processor, that we have a 9-bit mind. That's how much data it can process. So if we're dealing with an issue maybe that goes back 1,000 generations, how with a 9-bit mind do you deal with something that's gone on? You know, mom and dad and their moms and dads and theirs and theirs and theirs, going back literally to thousands and thousands of lives that this pattern's been established. So the extension of this 9-bit processor that we have, we could call the super processor Ruku-Dukudsha, that knows how to reach back and reach through what you're willing to have moved. And the only thing that limits that power's ability to reach back, reach through, and clean up what you need to clean up is your willingness or unwillingness to have it happen. So that's what we're speaking about when we speak of Ruku-Dukudsha. It's actually, my pronunciation isn't very good. It's actually a very guttural sound. You know, it's a kind of word that your mother taught you never to say because you spit on people when you do it. So it's actually more like Rusha. It comes from real deep in the throat, Rusha. And so that's Ruku-Dukudsha. Do you think the name must be used? Well, if you look on the worksheet, we've got a blank there because it's been called many different things. I don't think you can offend this power. So what you call it, it doesn't really care. But if you know there's something there and you invite it to go to work. So it's been called the higher power, the superconscious, the subconscious, the primordial X. I think there is a vibratory effect, and that's why on the worksheet there is the actual Aramaic words, even if you don't say them perfectly. And what I suggest to people is, if you come from a tradition where you have this strong relationship with what you've called the Holy Spirit, then use the Holy Spirit. But you might try out Ruku-Dukudsha, and we short form it as Rucha or Ruka. You might just try out that set of words and see if there is a more powerful vibratory influence. You know, one of the things that we're looking to do is to connect people to the deeper tradition. We had a conversation in class yesterday, that the world is so steeped in forgiveness as I let you off the hook for what's happening inside of me. And I've had several people over the years who said, well, why don't you just change it? Why don't you just start with a new word? But, Karl Marx tells us if you change the meaning of a word, you can destroy a culture. So 2,000 years ago, it was well understood by the man named Yeshua that forgiveness was the tool with which you go inside yourself and remove what never belonged. And the Greek translations came along, and it shifted. If you listen to Yeshua, he says, if you'll do your work, you will love those who hate you, do good to those who despitefully use you. Then you hear this fellow named Paul, who comes along, and I'm sure he was good-hearted and really wanted to go there. When this transformation took place for him, he was on it. He was moving it. And he says, when he's in the middle of his muddle, the stress is up and the chips are down, he says, why is it the things I would do, I cannot do, and the things I would not do, actually he says the things I hate are what I do. He didn't know about how to use this power and about how to use the forgiveness process. So forgiveness became totally, completely 180 degrees turned around. We were disconnected from the meaning of the word. Change the meaning of a culture's words, and you destroy the culture. So take a look at us now, 2,000 years later, and we've just about destroyed the planet, environmentally. You look at the continuous slaughter of people in war, and, of course, everybody on every side got a justification. They've all got a rationalization. Rationalize. It's time for us to stop rationalizing the slaughter of each other. There's an awesome quote, and I'm not sure I could do it totally correctly, but by, let me get his name. Not coming forward, but what he said was, in each generation, there's a group of people who make the slaughter of their fellows their business. How insane is that? And so there is a power in us that when we connect with it can move us through whatever we're willing and ready to move through. Invite it to go to work and start to move. So it's an energetic process. key in. And the way we key in is by asking. And interestingly enough, in the Greek translations, when they were talking about this power, what they said was the denial of this power was the unforgivable sin. In Aramaic, what it says is the denial of this power is the error that leaves you in unforgiveness. So why are we sticking with the word forgiveness? Because there is a heritage that goes deep into our genetics of the actual teaching on forgiveness. And when we get reestablished in what forgiveness is, that being reestablished takes us to a whole new depth, a whole new level. And so that's what we're here to do. So, Joe, does that get to the root of your question? And how to undo everything that never belonged. And I agree with you, Peacemaker. What tends to happen is we fight judgment instead of connecting, that we just get in that, oh, it's just so terrible, instead of, and you're right, to get into the connection with that elemental force. We move, one of my favorite kind of tongue-in-cheek lines in the workshop is, in order to really, truly heal, you got to be out of your mind. It's the mind that does all this arguing and this fighting and then. And when we are able to drop that, and what forgiveness does, what actual Aramaic forgiveness does, is it collapses the output of what we would call the body's mind, the replicate mind. And the replicate mind, we call the replicate mind because it can just replicate. It just plays out whatever's in it. And yes, Dr. Tim, I love that statement you came up with for that client, that when we let go of what appears to be protection, wow, whole new things are able to happen. Whole new things. So, and that the true power is, I would just, Peacemaker, I'd just slightly change that to it's the feeling connected, that our direct link, our direct connection is the major key in the process. And it's that connection that allows us to move out of the insane behaviors. How many have ever heard the drunk? Got drunk, did some horrific things and degenerative behavior, and the next morning they're falling over themselves with apology and the promise to never do it again. And it's a sincere promise. They really mean, I'm never going to do that again. I mean, we've all heard that, right? And in fact, probably we've all said that. Well, I'm never going to do that again. But the promise, as sincere as it is irrelevant until and unless one does the work of touching the mainspring of the behavior and change the patterns. And only true forgiveness can do that. You can count on a repeating pattern, repeating anytime the circumstances resonate that brain cell content that we've denied and dissociated from. So the minute we go into denial, we lose power over that part of our minds. I'm now powerless over my behavior in that arena. And, if you look into the 12-step programs, that's where they acknowledge I'm powerless over this. But because true forgiveness has been lost, and we haven't known how to crack that dissociated mind, how to collapse the projections of the dissociated mind and crack that dissociated mind, changing the behavior that's there doesn't happen. You can want it to change, you can hope it will change, you can sit around and talk about it, you can reason about it, you can repeat it, you can say, I'm never going to do it again. You can make new choices or new decisions till the cows come home. Every time the vibratory circumstance is right for that part of the dissociated mind to come up and take over behavior, just like Paul said, oh, look at this, awesome, I've had this experience of light, I've had this experience of love, I wrote about this wonderful experience, and it is patience, and it is kind, and that's how I want to live. But when the resonant circumstances show up that fire his dissociated mind, what happens? I do the things I hate. That man could not teach you how to change the content of your own dissociated mind because he didn't know. He didn't know in his own life. He obviously couldn't teach us. There is a man, however, 2,000 years ago who said, I am in this world, not of this world, and I know how to do this. Let me show you. And it was shown. There's a specific exact technology That's what's on the right-hand side of the worksheet, or pardon me, of the website under Download Worksheets. First three links shows you exactly the technology that he taught on how to collapse the projections of the mind and to crack the dissociated mind until, instead of being in relationship with your dissociated part through projection, you're now back in direct relationship with your dissociated mind, and then everything becomes changeable. Tim, did I hear your voice starting to come in there, sir?
Yeah, I was just going to say that the writing or the readings that I've done related to Paul indicate that not only did he never meet Jesus, but he didn't in his writings ever talk about Jesus' teachings. He didn't even reference his parables or his healings. And so it's not surprising that he didn't know this process.
Right.
He's really not, in the meat of his writings, he's not teaching what Jesus taught. He's teaching what his views are on what's love. That's right. Yeah. He's just talking about, in his views, what you ought to do and what it takes to love. But he wasn't the master at it.
And if you go back to the original theological understanding that came out of his work, it ultimately kind of culminates in about 300 A.D. as Catholic theology, and the root of the Catholic theology is laid out in a thing called the Apostles' Creed that came out of the Council of Nicaea in 300 A.D. And if you look at that, you see the whole life and teachings of a man named Yeshua compressed into a comma between two phenomenological events. The non-being mind, the hostility and fear-based mind, loves phenomenology. And so we hear the Apostles' Creed says, born of the Virgin Mary. Wow, what a phenomenal event that is to think about. Comma, then suffered and died under Pontius Pilate. Where's his life? His whole life and teaching is compressed into a comma. And so if you look at that root of Catholic theology, and then if you look at all the protesting Catholics that came afterward, a lot of what people who call themselves Protestants don't really realize that their root is still Catholicism. Protestant means protesting. What are they protesting? Catholicism. Protesting Catholics is what that whole theology is, and the theology, to a great degree, and many circles tried to open it up, but they didn't have access to the Aramaic. So they're still stuck into a lot of the old fear-based Catholicism that left behind the teachings of Jesus based on Paul's understanding. And so when you start to open up and go back to the Aramaic, we find, there are such awesome things there. What awesome things to move through and to access.
Are you reading the chat room?
I'm just looking in the chat room. The words tell our minds what data. That's exactly what the word system does. You go back to this guy Yeshua who understands this whole process, and he says, the key to life and death is in your words. And so the words you use are of such key importance. And feelings, yes, are simply a reflection of our thoughts. You're right on track there, Peacemaker. I agree with you. And when you say what I like to address is, I think you've addressed it in the chat room very well. And what Peacemaker writes, words are what tell our minds what data to use to form our reality. So the word structure is important. Yeah, there's a whole workshop we do called Communication. Did you hear what I think I said that goes into that principle? And then feelings bounce off of. Basically what feelings are, as you're saying in there, Peacemaker, is that it simply reflects the quality of our creative process, which, if you go to the opening words in the book of John, it does not say in the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh. It says in the beginning was the mind energy, and the mind energy became flesh. And Jeanie has a thought for me. Oh, excuse me, sweetie. Oh, okay. I'm looking and getting this a little differently. So I hear you saying the the way I see it, the feeling is a different rate or frequency feeling. I see thoughts at a different level, so to speak. Feel the feeling comes first and then the thought. Well, I wouldn't agree with you, because what you can do, we do an exercise in the Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop, where we get people to sit down and go into a meditation. You might want to try this at some point. And then allow themselves to feel anger. And just go through and let yourself feel anger, and then go to the feeling of sadness, and then go to the feeling of fear. And then at the end of that, and this is universal, I've been doing this exercise for 25 years with people, and I say, okay, what did you do to feel anger? What did you do in order to move from anger to fear, to sadness? Universally, 25 years, everybody's answer is always, I had a thought. And I'd offer that, if you go to the opening words in the book of John, it does not say in the beginning was the Word and the Word became flesh. It says in the beginning was the mind energy. And the mind energy, or the willed action, became flesh. And to me, that becomes a statement of our creative process. And I invite people to imagine if you were the creator and you were going to create a creature that could create like you with thought, what would be one of the nicest gifts you could give that creature? And I'd offer the nicest gift you could give them would be a feedback mechanism that tells them when their creative process is off base. I'd offer that's exactly what feelings are. We create through mind energy. If our creation is off base, then we will feel something less than love, and that informs us that our creative process is off base. And so, and when you say curious about having a feeling with no thoughts attached, I would offer that that's absolutely impossible to have a feeling with no thoughts attached. What happens, however, is that if there's something we've denied and been dissociated from, we'll be unconscious of the feeling around it. It will seem to not be there. And can you have a thought that doesn't produce a feeling? Yeah, if you've got something that's relatively neutral, then you're not going to have any particular feeling. But if you go to some extreme feelings, like just sit down and go through anger, fear, rage, grief, sadness, hate, vengeance, and I guarantee you can't do that without running a series of thoughts. And each thought will produce a different quality of feeling. And so that's my take. And, of course, nobody needs to agree with me, but the process of healing, to me, and what we find with the forgiveness process is out of the mind energy that we accumulate, we generate realities. Again, the key in with words. So we generate realities, and if our reality, based in thought, feels like sadness, grief, or rage, we've created something that we want to move out of. The forgiveness process from the Aramaic, that reality management worksheet, allows us to collapse the reality, the output of the mind, based in those thoughts, and to change those thoughts. And when we do, a whole different feeling comes up. So that would be my take on which comes first. And again, nobody needs to agree with me. That's just what my experience is. And when I've watched people allow themselves to access the thoughts beneath their feelings and change them, their feelings that kept them in cycles of hostility, fear, and pain, the feelings just disappear. And when the feelings disappear, there's an opportunity to do a whole different creative process. So the forgiveness is what allows you to expose perhaps 1,000 generations of a thought pattern, a creative pattern, like hostility or fear, expose it to love directly, take it out of dissociation, take out the denial process, collapse the projection, and expose it to love. And what happens is that the dissociated material begins to dissolve and reintegrate. And so it's the removal of what never belonged. And then we get a whole different creative process.
Michael?
So that's where yes, sir.
Joe's asking about having feelings with no thoughts, and I think it's an important point to bring up that even today the modern neuroscientists estimate that when I'm really paying attention, I'm only able to be aware of about 5% of my cognitive activity at any moment. So I have many, many more thoughts than I can be consciously aware of, and that's how it can seem to me as though these feelings come up out of nowhere.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that when we're dissociated from it, feelings are the warning signal to tell you what's going on in your mind. And I'd offer that words, which reflect thoughts, produce feelings. Feelings don't produce thoughts and don't produce words. It's the other way around. But, everybody's entitled to however they think. The key becomes, and I see Peacemaker, you don't agree, and that's okay. No need to. But keep doing the worksheet and collapse. Whichever comes first, is it the chicken or the egg? It really doesn't matter. If you got a tool with which to delete what doesn't fit with your creative process, then let's go for it. And let's move through it. That to me is what's most important. And let go of what never belonged.
Joe was then asking, how is it that we build brain cells?
New information. The brain cells are the cellular structures capacity to store information. When we talk about building brain cells, we're not talking about building new physical structure. What we're talking about is the capacity of our cellular structure to store information. So if you go back into the Aramaic, Yeshua referred to this, and he said, those who having eyes do not see, those who have ears do not hear. What he's saying is, those folks don't have the brain cells for what he's saying. And then he says that his work is only for those who have the eyes and the ears. So I'll oftentimes hear back from people who do the main Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop. And, quite often we end up talking to people who've been offended by the religious structures of the world based in hostility and fear. And then we'll get somebody who hears the workshop and goes, well, maybe there's something actual and real about this teaching that comes out of the ancient Aramaic. So they go back to church. And so many times I've had somebody come to me afterward and say, I went to the preacher afterward and told him how awesome it was what he said. And the preacher said, well, what did you hear? And he shares what he heard. And the preacher's like, I didn't say that. That never came out of my mouth. Well, perhaps the preacher didn't have the eyes to see and the ears to hear what he was really saying. But what happens is, as one goes through this work, they develop a way of seeing that is not in common experience, because they then have the brain cells to hear and to see what is truly going on. And so as I build the brain cells, I put new information into this carbon-based memory system for recall. And it becomes part of my database.
Michael?
Yes, sir.
On Tuesday, we did the Aramaic Beatitudes from the gentleman who did the Way of Mastery. And in the introduction, he mentions that the ancient Aramaic language has very few words relative to a language like English. And
right.
He talks about how in Western culture today, knowledge is perceived to be based on knowing words and knowing specific definition for individual words. And therefore, the more words we can define, the more we think we have knowledge, the more we structure them in a way that makes sense. Now we have knowledge about a thing based on the words we use to describe it. He said in the ancient Aramaic, they understood that the words themselves carried no meaning, but they created a vibration. They carried with them a vibration, and the meaning would be understood at many, many levels depending upon the person receiving it and their capacity to understand. So the very
their brain cell content.
Right. The very same words spoken by one person resonate an entirely different level of understanding in 5 people, and they're all listening to the same words. And as you're saying, it's because it resonates different brain cell content in them, because they've had
different reality.
Right, they've had different experiences that allow them to understand it at a new and different level. And it's a wonderful intro to Beatitude set, which talks about the very thing that you use as a foundation of understanding your work.
Yeah, precisely. And, Peacemaker, when you're talking about, when we're born, we have no thoughts. Actually, you look into the research, and what you'll find is that when they take a newborn and there's some research that's been done with microphotography, and someone in the space, they'll be photographing a child's body, and someone will speak a word, and when they speak a word, every time they speak that word, there is a micro movement in tissue. I'd offer we come in with the whole language base of our ancestors, the whole reality structure of our ancestors. We're not locked into it yet, but if you look at that research, the total newborn, just out of the package, and it has micro movements for every word that's spoken around it. There is an energetic response in tissue because there's resonance there and the information's there. And so we come in with a whole basis and foundation, and what then happens is we get the opportunity to clarify as we do our work what never belonged, forgive, remove what never belonged from the generations. If you look at the ancient teachings where they had the knowledge that look to the lives of the fathers, for ours are but a shadow of theirs upon the earth. The sins of the fathers will be passed on to 3 and 4 generations. What they were saying was, we have in this so-called body-mind package a multi-generational database. All the data is there, all the words, all the thoughts, all the feelings. My take would be that's why there's that micro-movement each time, if you speak the word mind or, whatever word you speak, there'll be that micro-movement in the child's body because there's resonance, and it's activating those structures that are in our package when we get it. And the work is removing everything from the package that doesn't support human life. What is human life? Human life is about the active presence of love. What came with the package from the generations, the energies, the word sin in Aramaic simply means off the mark. It's energy that doesn't belong. What came with the package that doesn't belong that needs to be forgiven? Delete it from brain cells, remove it, and you're finished with the behaviors associated with it. And so, to me, it's an awesome way to have a discussion, and I wouldn't see it particularly as debate. That comes from the root of the word beat. It's not about beating anybody, but or fighting over it. It's just, let's have a discussion, and then if there are tools, and that's our whole thing, as opposed to the intellect trying to figure it out. That's one of the things, in our codependence workshop, we offer that one of the pseudo-solutions in the non-being mind is to figure it out. Well, you can't figure it out, but you can collapse the structures from generations of hostility or fear that never belonged, and you do that through forgiveness. And then you come to an awake, aware human life, and you find a place in your form to embody that. If you go into the Eastern Orthodox teaching, the whole idea of that teaching was to incarnate, for us to come into this form fully as the human active presence of love that we were born as and designed to be. It's hard for somebody to incarnate, however, in a multi-generational database that's filled with rage and fear and grief and vengeance and gossip and slander and, all the things that go along with our non-human culture. That's why that one beatitude where we're told it says, blessed are they mourning their wrongs, for they will be comforted. What that actually says is a latent neural structure implanted by the Creator. So we have these neural structures from the beginning. Becomes your conscious possession. It's latent because it's been suppressed. It's been dissociated from by the world of hostility and fear. So what that beatitude in Aramaic says, a latent neural structure implanted by the Creator to guide you to happiness and well-being becomes your conscious possession. You who love truth, who look into your errors in thought and the errors of your society, for you will be cured of mental stress. What is the mental stress? It's all the goals, all the hostilities, all the fears stored at a genetic and at a cellular level, activated by the environment, pulled out of the genetics and into activity. And so to allow those things to come forward and simply forgive them becomes the whole key to the process. And the person who swears they're never going to do it again, but doesn't have a way to delete the thoughts behind the behavior, because those thoughts oftentimes are filled with such, let's say, rage and fear, that the rage and fear blows us out unconscious, and we function out of unconscious parts of our mind that we're not in touch with and therefore unable to change. The forgiveness process empowers us to become conscious of those unconscious parts, to collapse the projection, and to remove the root of the behaviors. And they're all based in mind energy. And as you remove the root of the behaviors, everything changes. So, like Paul is confused by his inability to change his mind or behavior, it's because he doesn't know how to collapse what comes from that unconscious behavior. And so as one is able to do that, as we acquire the actual skill of forgiveness, then you get to follow your own will and choice. That is, I want to function as a human being. If you hold that in this particular circumstance, though, what my family system has learned, the thoughts that have been passed on to me and the feelings are I rage and scream at somebody, then when an environment shows up that resonates those brain cells that contain the family pattern of raging and screaming, then what Paul is saying is, why is it that I do what I hate? Because in his carbon-based memory system is rage and scream. And so when that particular environment comes up, though he wants to function as love, though he wants to function as a human life, raging and screaming comes up and takes over. Because he didn't know how to collapse that, which is what the forgiveness process does. Every time it comes up, he's run by it. And when we begin to take apart that which is against our own will and choice with forgiveness, then something different happens. And that ancient Aramaic technology of forgiveness is how to do that work. And again, if you're new to the show, on the right-hand side of the website, www.whyagain.com is a link that says download worksheets. Click on that link, and you'll find the first 3 links will explain the whole forgiveness process. It'll give you a radio show to listen to where we guide somebody through the process. It'll give you the actual worksheet, and it'll give you a copy of the final chapter of my book. You're also welcome to go to the website and download the whole book free, too. And it steps into that Aramaic tool of true forgiveness by which you collapse the thought rooted or reflected as words and feelings that take you out of choice, and if you function against your own will and choice, how to be restored to that will and choice. And so that's what we're here to do. And
Michael?
You'll be, yes, sir.
I've been moved to comment because this person in the chat room was talking about I like a good debate. It came to me to mention that even though you're on the internet here 5 days a week talking all about this process, the key is not the talking, it's the doing. That the value for me of your work and having been introduced to it 5 or 6 years ago is the results it produces in my life when I actually apply the tools in the moment and day to day between painful moments, and the actual results in my life experience. That's the value. So even though we're talking for an hour, what we're trying to do, what the purpose is to support people in actually picking up the tools and applying them. So it removes the need for debate, because if I move into an experience that's more loving, then I don't need to talk about it, and I don't need to preach it to other people. I simply experience the improvement in my day-to-day life, my ability to experience that energy of love, and for me, the dramatic decrease in the amount of time and the intensity with which I experienced the anger, frustration, sadness, and fear that had been just an average, a regular part of my life, no matter how hard I was trying other tools. And the dramatic decrease in the amount of time and the intensity with which I experienced that since using your tools is worth all of it to me. It's the doing.
Absolutely. I'm in full agreement. And Peacemaker, I agree with you. It is about action. It's about taking and putting the tools to work. As far as having a debate, again, the root of the word, if you look at it, debate means to beat. And, what we're looking to do here is to have everybody on this show come out through every discussion and every tool described as a winner, not as someone who's beaten. And, again, we're not going to figure it out. Figuring it out is the booby prize. Doing the work, the action, as you say, and with the intent of healing. That my conscious intent, which I then turn into goals, because we live in a culture that tells us that intent has all kinds of power. Well, intent has never moved a muscle. And they used to say in the ancient teachings where they understood this, they said that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. What does that mean? The first stage of potential behavior is our intention. If you never turn the intention into a goal, then there'll never be a behavior, an action that follows through. And most people are run by unconscious goals. And that, like Paul talks about, he wants to establish this world of love, and his unconscious goal, however, is that I have to, when the stress is up and the chips are down, I do what I hate. And that runs him. That's why the core of the forgiveness process is about canceling goals. That as you collapse the goals, as you cancel the goals, you collapse the projection, and then you can go to the root of that behavior, the thought that's behind the feeling that motivates that behavior, and you can collapse that behavior, and all of a sudden you're behaving totally and completely differently. And that's what we're looking to do. And I did say booby. Yes, the booby prize. Absolutely. So we have a caller, area code 603. Jeanie just handed me a little note. And so 603, you're on the air. Who are we speaking to? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Lynn. My area code is New Hampshire, but I'm in Oregon.
Well, how are things in Oregon, Lynn?
Well, they're good. And listening, I'm wondering if in calling in I can ask for some help on a worksheet.
Absolutely. That's our purpose for being here. We'd love to hear your question.
Okay, I've been doing worksheets for, Michael, when you and Jeanie were out here in Oregon, I didn't have the pleasure of meeting you then, but I heard about your work from someone who did, and I've been doing worksheets ever since, and talking and emailing with Jeanie a bit, and she encouraged me to call in. I'm struggling with an issue with alcohol, and it's to talk about genetics. I mean, I'm Swedish, and it's throughout my entire family, and I don't know how to do a worksheet around. I mean, I've done lots of worksheets with it, but I'm in this. How do I approach it? If I put drinking as 1A, where do I go from there?
Okay. Well, here's where I'd go with that. First of all, when we were in Sweden, I was really quite shocked to see how they've handled the alcohol problem, at least in one arena, and that is there is zero tolerance. You can't get behind the wheel of a car if you've had a half an ounce of alcohol. I thought that was interesting, and I understood it, that it was done because there was just so much alcoholism that, the toll on the roads was horrendous. But my take, in 40 years of doing this work, and in classic treatment circles, you don't even talk to somebody who's practicing whatever the drug or alcohol, whatever it is. They have to become dried out, clean, and sober first. I work with practicing active drug and alcohol addicts all the time. And what my goal is first of all, of course, they have to be straight and sober when they're in front of me, but is to give them the tool of forgiveness. When they start to use that tool, what will happen is they will collapse whatever the reality is that covers up their pain. And when they do that, they'll go to the root of the pain in the structure, which, again, is oftentimes generational. That's why the alcoholism, sometimes they say, well, it'll skip a family. Maybe a child sees an alcoholic parent and says, man, I'm never going to do that. So they maybe become an hostility addict and their child is an alcoholic. The aholic behavior, and we go into this in the codependence to interdependence work, the aholic behavior, whatever it is always about, I have something painful in me that is so unbearable, I maybe don't even know it's there. It's so unbearable that I need an anesthetic to at least get some relief from the pain. Now, people would say, well, how could you have pain and not know it's there? It's easy to understand. If you've ever put a wool sweater on and you put it on and, ooh, it's itchy. But about 10, 15 minutes later, the itch is gone, right? If you wore that wool sweater for 8 hours, 8 hours later, you knew the itch wasn't gone for the last 8 hours because you take it off and think, oh, God, that feels so good to have it off, and you scratch all over. The itch was there the whole time. The mind just adjusted it out of awareness. The reason why my take, an alcoholic uses alcohol, a drug addict uses drugs, is because they hold painful realities that are unconscious, and every time that those painful realities start to resonate, that's when they fall off the wagon. They reach for an anesthetic, and if you take 2 molecules of alcohol and take the water out, you've got ether, feeling no pain. So as opposed to necessarily doing worksheets on alcoholism, I'd look at the trigger situations in your life. When, I've decided I'm going to leave alcohol and I'm not touching it, and for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, I go without it, everything's cool, and then all of a sudden I have an argument with a coworker, and the coworker goes to the boss and has a gossip conversation behind me, and now the boss is looking at me with strange looks like maybe they're going to fire me. And, that resonates back to, gee, when I was a kid and Mom used to look at me with those eyes and I knew I was going to get beaten. So I'd be doing worksheets on the coworker who gossips behind my back, the boss who might fire me, and the remembrance of Mom beating on me. And in that circumstance, all those things those brain cells are resonating. And when you do the worksheet around those things, what will happen is you'll get directly in touch with the root of that dissociated pain. You'll remove the dissociated pain, and instead of that being a stimulus for falling off the wagon, that becomes the opportunity to heal those issues. And the next time I have an argument with a coworker and they go to the boss, I'll just look at them and go, so what? I won't need to fall off the wagon and anesthetize my pain because I've gone in and deleted it, removed my pain. So that would be the arena I'd suggest working in.
The feeling that I'm very aware of associated with the drinking, or that I cover up with the drinking, is sadness, loneliness, apathy, isolation. That's what triggers my drinking.
Right. I hear you. Let me just ask Jeanie.
And the drinking makes me sad and lonely.
Well, what happens is, when you use alcohol, what happens, and we've only got a few seconds left, and we can carry this conversation on tomorrow. I'd love to get deeper into it because I think this is a good question for everybody, whether they're using alcohol or whatever their drug is. But with the brain, about 90% of the brain's chemistry is tied up in inhibitor, in inhibiting feelings, thoughts. And so when one uses alcohol, what happens is it wipes out the inhibitors. Now everything they never wanted to deal with, drunk that's, got life fairly manageable, and then all of a sudden they put down their fifth of scotch, and now they're sitting there in tears and crying. It's because the inhibitors have been knocked out. And when the inhibitors are knocked out, it's all there in their faces. And so that's the place to do forgiveness. And our show is over all of a sudden, but please, I'd love to hear from you tomorrow. Let's continue our conversation. It's an awesome one. We support you in creating the best year yet of your return life. On Monday, yes. Today's Friday, isn't it? Best year yet. Thank you all. All the blessings.
Thank you for listening to MindShifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife, Jeanie, who present the internal Aramaic process of forgiveness. Michael and Jeanie are here every Monday through Friday from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Earth Angels Radio. For more on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.earthangelradio.com. whyagain.com. That's www.whyagain.com.